If you're wanting to level up your English speaking, one of the most important things that you need to do is learn more phrases that English speakers actually use in their conversations. And you need to put your textbooks aside because they're not teaching you the more advanced things that you actually need to know when speaking in English. In today's video, I'll teach you 10 phrases in depth with a ton of examples that will help you in your actual conversations, and they're phrases that native speakers like myself actually use on a day-to-day basis. Let's get started with the lesson. Make sure to subscribe to my email list down below to receive a free PDF that will help you through today's English lesson. Let's get started. A very interesting phrase that English speakers use to call attention to something, and this phrase is really casual, but you can use it with your friends, or you would be able to use this phrase in a professional situation, is you can say, I'd like to note that, and then you explain what you're trying to bring attention to. Let's say you're going to have a running race between your friends, and you want to explain that one person might have an advantage. You might say, I'd like to note that Jill is an Olympic gold medalist. So you're just bringing to the attention that Jill has an advantage over everyone else. Or if you want to bring attention that somebody has a disadvantage, you could say, I'd like to note that Jeff has never run a mile in his life. So it's just like you're having this conversation, and if you're using this phrase, I'd like to note, that just means like, wait, stop real quick, we need to think about this important detail. A really common way this phrase is also used is when you want to say that you did not agree with someone's decision that turned out to be a bad decision. Let me give you a few examples of this. So going back to our running race example, maybe the race doesn't go so well. Maybe somebody even gets hurt. You might say, I'd like to note that I didn't think this race was a very good idea. So we use this phrase to talk about our opinion before something happened. Another way we use this phrase is when we want to call attention to something that we did. Let's say we had an English test and we're really tired and we did good on the test. Someone said, wow, English comes really easy to you. You just want to tell them that you actually studied a lot. So you could say, I'd like to note that I was up all night studying. This test was not easy to me. So you're just calling attention to something that you want someone else to know that they may have not thought about when you use this phrase. I'd like to note.
I'd like to note. Oh, I'd like to sit in and give notes.
I'd like to note the absence.
Speaking of really good English phrases, I want to explain the next phrase on this list, speaking of. So we use this phrase all the time for transitions when we're speaking in English. If you ever listen to English speaking podcasts, you will hear the hosts of the podcast use this all of the time. So it's kind of like you can use this phrase when you're having a conversation about one subject, and a small part of the subject relates to what you want to talk about next. You say, speaking of, and that lets the listener know that you're going to speak about that some more and kind of change subjects. Sometimes we also use this phrase to transition to a new topic because someone reminded us of something that we wanted to bring up or we wanted to say. So maybe you're talking to your friend and they bring up that they just went to a birthday party the other day, and you remember that it's actually your friend's birthday pretty soon. You might say, speaking of birthdays, don't you have a birthday coming up? That means, don't you have a birthday in the near future, maybe the next few days or the next few weeks or even the next month? And it's just a good way when you're having especially a small talk conversation to keep the conversation going. You know, you think of something and you want to introduce it as the next topic of conversation. Sometimes I use this phrase, speaking of, in a small talk conversation if I want to ask how someone is doing. So let's say I'm talking to my friend and, I say, yeah, my husband's doing good. Speaking of husbands, how's Miguel, your husband? Or I often like to ask my friends about their own family. So I'll say, oh, speaking of, how's your mom doing? Speaking of, how's your grandma doing? If we get on the subject of family or just any family members, that reminds me to ask them how their family's doing.
Speaking of.
Speaking of.
Speaking of,
Do you know how to use the phrase last minute? This is really important because it can be either an adjective or a noun when you use this phrase, and it's so common amongst English speakers. So I'm going to show you how this phrase can be used as an adjective or a noun, and it can be used to say the exact same thing. You might say, I need to get a last minute gift. My sister's birthday is today. So you're describing the gift as last minute. That's the adjective, last minute. When we use the phrase last minute, it just means you don't have much time to get it. You waited until the last possible time period to get something or to do something. So you don't want to typically do things last minute because you're usually rushed and it means that you maybe procrastinated them. But sometimes we can't help doing things last minute because, things just come up and we have to work with the time that we have. So we can use that phrase last minute to describe the gift, or we can say, I went shopping at the last minute for my sister's birthday gift. So in this sentence, we're using the phrase as a noun. We went shopping at the last minute. It's a time that we went to go shopping. I didn't know I was going to the movies tonight. It was a last minute decision. So it was a late decision. We didn't plan going to the movies all week. We just decided right before to buy tickets and go. So we're describing the situation as last minute here. Or we can say, I decided at the last minute that we are going to the movies tonight. So this sentence means the exact same thing. We did think a lot about this decision beforehand, but we're saying we decided at the last minute. So we're using this phrase as a noun. So last minute is so useful in English. You'll hear it all the time.
Oh, last minute gift. Need this last minute?
Last minute change.
Are you studying collocations in English? So collocations are usually two words that go together, or a phrase and a word that typically goes together. For this next phrase, off and on, there are a ton of really common collocations that go along with it. So if you learn these, you'll be understanding them very easily in English now that I've brought them to your attention. So when we talk about something happening off and on, it means exactly as you would guess. It means it starts and stops. It begins and starts. So we often say it's raining off and on. So that means it's not continuously raining. It hasn't been raining all day. Maybe it will rain for an hour, and then it will stop for an hour, and then it will rain for 5 minutes and stop for another hour, and then it will rain for another 2 hours, something like that. So we can say it's raining off and on. We can say it's snowing off and on, which means the exact same thing except for it's snow. Sometimes if two people date and then they break up, and then they get back together again and have a romantic relationship and date and then break up, we say they have been dating off and on for 2 years, or they've been dating off and on for a couple months. So their relationship isn't very serious because sometimes they break up and they're not together. If you're working off and on, that means you aren't employed. You don't have a job full time. Maybe you do a few odd jobs and you take some time off. And then you find another job and work for a season of the year. Maybe you have a summer job and then you have some time off. So you could say, I've been working on and off. Or you can say, I've been working off and on. They really mean the same thing. You can say off and on or on and off in all of these phrases. Finally, another common collocation is sleeping on and off. Oh, I was sleeping on and off all night. That means you kept waking up and then you'd go back to sleep.
Off and on.
On and off.
Off and on.
One phrase that I really like to teach is the phrase, do the math. It's just a very casual way to say that you are going to figure out the exact number. But we can also use this phrase to say, like, we didn't want to figure out exactly how something happened. Or if someone says, how old are you? You can say, well, I grew up listening to cassette tapes, those old tapes that you would listen to music on. And you can say, you can do the math. That means I'm not going to tell you exactly how old I am, but you can kind of guess based off what I told you. Now, so there's that way to use this phrase, but we can also just say, I didn't want to do the math, so I bought some extra food for everyone. That means I didn't want to calculate exactly how much food we need for each person, so I just bought a lot. I didn't do the math, but there should be enough. This just means you didn't officially do any calculations or you didn't use any numbers. You just kind of guessed. So we can say, I did the math, which means you didn't guess, you figured it out. Or commonly we say, I didn't do the math, which means we didn't officially figure out, we just guessed how much we would need.
Do the math, Kimmy.
Let's do the math.
Right. Let's do the math.
The next English phrase comes from the idea that if you throw mud at the wall, you can see what sticks. You can see how much will stick. So this is just saying that, you're just gonna throw out a few ideas and you'll see which one actually works. I think of this phrase a lot for naming things. Let's say you started a business and you're not sure what you want to call your business yet, but you're gonna try out a few name ideas and you'll say, I'll see what sticks. So you'll see what people actually like to call your business or what ends up sounding good or being the easiest to use as your business name. If you're writing a song, you might try out a few different melodies and see what sticks in the song. So that just means you'll see, which one will work the best. And you're not set on one and you're not trying to be super official about each one. So you just see what works by using the different melodies. So when you say we're just seeing what sticks, it means you're going to see which idea works based on just trying them all very casually. I love using this next phrase in English, from the get-go. If you want to say from the beginning, this is kind of a casual slang way to say it, from the get-go. So we often say, I didn't like this from the get-go. That means you didn't like it from the beginning. Or I was a big fan of this from the get-go. That means you really like something from the beginning, maybe even before it was popular. Maybe your friend buys a piece of clothing because they think it's really trendy, and you say, I really don't like that, you shouldn't buy it. And then eventually they say, wow, I shouldn't have bought this new shirt. I shouldn't have bought these cargo pants. You can say, well, I told you I didn't like it from the get-go. That means from the beginning, when you first introduced the idea, from the get-go, that's when I told you I didn't like it.
Me from the get-go.
From the get-go?
Right from the get-go.
If you ever are invited to an outing, a lunch, a dinner, or a party in the United States, you might be able to respond that you are in or you are at. So if you want to say that you're in, count us in. This phrase means that you can depend on me coming to the party or coming to the outing. Or if you want to say that you don't want to go, you can say, count me out. So don't count me in your numbers. I'm out. I'm not going. Your friend might say, I hope you can make it to my party on Saturday. And you look at your calendar, there's nothing there. You might respond with, count me in. Or if you are in a work situation, commonly people will say, hey, we're going to lunch. Do you want to come? You can say, count me in. That means I can go, or count me out. Sorry, I can't go. You can also say this phrase, count me out, if someone was, assuming that you were going to do something. Hey, we're all going skydiving. Let's go. You can say, count me out. I am afraid of heights. That means don't depend on me going. I'm not going. Count me out. So it can be very definite too when you really don't want to do something. You can definitely use these phrases to ask if someone is going to do something. Just like before, you can say, can we count you in for lunch today? And the person might say, yes, count me in, or count me out.
You're right. Count us in.
Count us in.
Me. Count me out.
So you probably already know this phrase or this idea, but you probably don't know the actual words for it. The phrase is process of elimination. So when you're taking a test and it's a multiple answer test, sometimes you don't know the right answer. Sometimes you just don't know the answer to the test. But by the process of elimination, that means getting rid of the wrong answers, you can make a pretty good guess on what the answer is. So when you're using the process of elimination, it just means you're getting rid of things that you know are not wrong or bad choices, and you're going to go with whatever is left after everything else is eliminated or gotten rid of. So let's say you're doing just a puzzle and you have a few pieces left and you can't figure out where, the piece is going to fit. You can try every piece in the same spot in the puzzle, and you can eliminate the pieces if they don't work, and eventually you'll at least have one piece that should work. Unless you're like me and you lose pieces to the puzzle, then your puzzle probably won't get completed. But process of elimination just means, considering every choice and either eliminating it or deciding that it's the correct answer.
Process of elimination.
Okay, process of elimination.
Simple process of elimination.
The last phrase I really like to teach slowly to English learners because the verb to refer can mean a few different things, and you really need to know the context of how you're using it in order to understand it. So let's talk about a few of the uses. First, we can use refer to mean direct. So the phrase that I'm going to teach you is refer to. So you can use refer to someone on something, like a subject. So you can say, refer to your boss on your paid time off or your vacation time. So that means don't ask anyone else at the company. Refer or direct your questions to your boss. Now we can also use the verb refer to mean that something means something else. So you can say, refer to me as Miss Kayla. That means call me Miss Kayla. Don't actually call me Miss Kayla. You can just call me Kayla. But just for example, if you want someone to call you a different name than, your name on your government documents, you can say, oh, you can refer to me as Jim, or you can refer to me as Will instead of William. So this is just one way that it's used. Let's talk a little bit more about the phrase refer to someone on something. This phrase comes up a ton in email, especially in the workplace. So you might get an email about your paychecks and it might say, refer to Susie on all matters payroll. So payroll is the department or the subject of getting pay at work or paycheck at work. And all of your questions are going to go to Susie because it says refer to Susie on payroll questions or refer to Susie on payroll. This just means direct or, everything needs to go to Susie relating to this subject. Refer to her, go to her. So this phrase is a little bit difficult to use, but you'll start hearing it a lot, especially as you work more in English. Thank you guys so much for learning more with me. My name is Kayla. I'm an English teacher. Make sure to check out a few more of my lessons because I have so many more phrases to teach to you that are advanced in the English language. And if you haven't already, use the link below so that you can keep studying this list of phrases in a free PDF form. Sometimes it helps to actually read the phrases after you've listened and watched me explain them. I'll see you guys in the next video. Talk to you later.